I'm Richard Hill, and today I'm talking to Nick Lewis of Nick Lewis Communications, and we're going to be talking about LinkedIn. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Richard.
Nick, starting with a very basic question, what is LinkedIn?
Well, LinkedIn is a business-to-business social network. I'm sure many people who are watching this video are familiar with Facebook, which is a social network where you can add friends and interact with them in various ways via private messages or public message boards. And LinkedIn is probably best described as a professional version of that. So rather than connecting with friends and family, you connect with business partners, former colleagues, other people in your field.
And that sort of raises an interesting question. So what sort of person would I find using it?
Fellow professionals, really. You have a profile which many people treat as almost like a de facto CV or potted work history, and it can show, depending on your settings, it can show your own connections to other people, but mainly people sort of interact with each other on LinkedIn groups, which are sort of online communities hosted by LinkedIn, which your profile is connected to that group, and you can comment and post and interact and possibly meet new people or talk to people you have dealt with previously in a professional context. So it's quite a diverse group of people you can meet on that.
You've given some ideas about what it's used for, but what do professionals mainly use it for?
Networking. I mean, I would sort of say that LinkedIn has replaced the old-fashioned Rolodex, or even, say, your Outlook address calendar. You make connections on LinkedIn. You maintain them. You can be kept up to date with other people's professional development or their own posting. As with Facebook, you get a news feed which displays posts made by others, and that gives you an idea of content being shared and sort of status updates made by other people. And it can also be used for getting recommendations and online references. So, for example, if I worked with a colleague in the past and I wanted to get that colleague to vouch for my work, I would ask him to write me a recommendation, which would then appear on my profile. But next to his name would be a link, or his name would be actually hyperlinked back to his own profile, so people can actually see it's a real person who's provided that link, rather than sort of myself who's just making up references or referrals for myself.
I'm sure you never do that, Nick.
Oh, no.
If there was. But what I was thinking of, though, it seems to me that LinkedIn splits into two from what you're describing. To some extent, it's a network for people, I'm using the word ambition here, but people who are ambitious, they want to get on, maybe they're looking for a job or they're looking for a position or to link into people they might, within that professional network, to make sales, to do marketing. The other side of it really would be in terms of individuals presenting their companies and their career track records, or it's almost like a recommendation from what you're saying, justification of what it is they do.
Yeah,
is that a fair?
I think that's a very fair comment and an acute observation. It can be used as a way of furthering one's own career, but really it can also be used as sort of soft marketing, as it were, for your current employer or your own business, where you want to keep people informed of what you're doing, but you don't necessarily want to be bombarding them with regular emails or newsletters. People voluntarily log into LinkedIn and they sort of receive the information sort of almost passively, in the sense of they have expressed an interest to find out what's going on, they go to their wall, they see the various posts. So in some ways it's much more effective, because if you post regularly onto LinkedIn, it's a good way of keeping people appraised of what you're up to or what you find interesting, and reminds people of your existence as well, which can be quite handy in a professional context.
You mentioned groups, communities, and company pages. Can you give me a bit more background of the value of each of those in LinkedIn?
Well, starting off with groups. Groups can be set up by any member of LinkedIn and can be set up according to a sector or interest or demographic background, if you so want, and it really acts as an online message board or forum in which you can create discussions and comment on other people's discussions. A bit like a Facebook group or an old-fashioned message board which used to get on the internet in the 2000s. The key difference being that every post that you make links back to your own LinkedIn profile. So people, if they like what they say, like what they see of what you say, they can click on that link and be taken back to your profile, find out a bit more about you, and then choose whether or not to connect with you. Or conversely, LinkedIn groups can be a good place of interacting with people you're not connected with, nor would you necessarily want to be connected with, whether that be due to the fact that they're competitors and you may not necessarily want them to have access to your profile, or whether you just want to be more selective in who you connect with.
And then company pages, what about those?
Company pages are an equivalent of a personal individual LinkedIn profile, but as the name suggests, rather than being about an individual, it is about a company. And multiple LinkedIn users can be administrators for a LinkedIn company page, and that page can post status updates which appear in the feeds of people who choose to follow that company page. Rather than connecting, you end up following company pages on LinkedIn, and people can interact and comment on those posts. Above and beyond that, you have a description of the company itself, with various fields you fill in, like number of employees, location, but you can also list your products and services, and each one of those products and services can have a page. So that page can be customized with text, with bullet points, with links, both within LinkedIn and external to LinkedIn, and you can also embed things such as YouTube videos. So in effect, it becomes another web page, but actually hosted on LinkedIn to promote your businesses, products, or services.
There's a lot of crossover, as you know, between different sorts of social media. You mentioned a sort of crossover with Facebook and a crossover with Google Plus a little earlier on. Where do you think LinkedIn sits in relation to those?
Well, LinkedIn very much has cut out a niche for itself. It is the professional social network, and it's predominantly used, I would say, by professionals to interact with peers, peer-to-peer or B2B selling. You wouldn't necessarily use LinkedIn, I would argue, for business, B2C, business to customer selling, because it's not the appropriate format. Yes, links you share on LinkedIn can be seen by your connections or in groups and actually help towards things such as SEO. But I think people, when they log on to LinkedIn, don't necessarily want to be bombarded with sales messages. They want to be bombarded with information which is relevant to their career or their profession, and also want to make connections which they deem valuable either to themselves or to the organisation that they work for.
Engagement is a big thing that people talk about at the moment. How would you advise a new user of LinkedIn to set about engaging on the pages?
Well, I would say when initially setting up your profile, you only connect with people you actually know. You can define who you know in an offline sense as well as an online sense. If you have a good online interaction with someone, you may as well ask them to connect with you on LinkedIn. You don't necessarily have had to have physically met someone to add them, but LinkedIn make a big thing of only asking its users only to connect with people who they have some kind of knowledge of, rather than having sort of connecting with random strangers. But having said that, I have connected with people I haven't actually really interacted with in any great depth, because they happen to be in my same sector, or they seem to be an interesting person, or I've read a blog of theirs that I've liked. But initially I would keep the circle quite close and just invite people that you have worked in. Also join some groups and see what they're about, depending on what you're using LinkedIn for. And LinkedIn groups cover sectors, professions, hobbies, interests, university graduates from the same place. So just join a couple of groups and see which work for you, but don't really aggressively post or start discussions in those groups. Just see what kind of discussions are taking place and engage with those which have already been started. And then when you feel comfortable, then start a discussion. One thing you've got to be careful of is not starting the same kind of discussion in the same kind of group over and over and over again, because this could get you sort of moderated, which causes all kinds of problems for a LinkedIn user.
Nick, thank you for that nice introduction to LinkedIn. Where can people find out more about it?
LinkedIn has a variety of online resources. I myself blog about LinkedIn, and you can find my blog on www.nicklewiscommunications.com, and if you click on the LinkedIn categories tab, that will show you all my posts on LinkedIn. But within my blog posts, I link to others who write about the social network, and it's worth investigating further.
That's great, Nick. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much.